Today we start Chapter 2, and in Chapter 2, Lesson 1, we're going to be specifically talking about expressions, algebraic expressions, how to evaluate them, and how to write them. So we're starting with vocabulary words. Algebra is the math of variables, and our first word, variable, is important to know. A variable is a symbol that represents one or more numbers. Now that symbol is usually going to be a lowercase letter of the alphabet. So maybe a lowercase t, or an n, or an x. It can be any letter whatsoever. The root word of variable is vary. It's important to remember that vary means change. So if a variable, let's say a lowercase letter t, is first represented by a 5, it can change and be something else later. So that's just kind of important to kind of keep tucked in the back of your mind. Our next vocabulary, algebraic expression. An expression is a mathematical phrase with at least one variable. The word phrase here is just like in English. In English, we have sentences which are complete, and we have phrases which are not complete. So a mathematical phrase is not complete. In other words, it's going to look like a problem, but it will not have an equal sign. The equal sign is what makes it complete. So we're just going to have something like 5 plus x, or t plus 2. Those are phrases. Our third vocabulary, evaluate. It means that we're going to substitute a value for the variable and calculate an answer. It is important to remember that we will always be using the order of operations. No matter what we're doing, no matter what chapter we're in, we will always be talking about using the order of operations that we learned in Chapter 1. So what do we mean by this? Let's use that example of an expression, t plus 2. All right, so let's say that we're going to substitute for the variable t, we're going to substitute the value of 5. So now instead of t plus 2, we have 5 plus 2, and we could simplify that to 7. That's what we are doing when we are evaluating an algebraic expression. All right. So now how do we translate into an algebraic expression? We translate into an algebraic expression by first defining our unknown. So let's say that we had x, and we tell what x is going to stand for. So describe what the variable will represent. Here's an example. Maybe x will represent the number of quarters that you have. Then you translate the words into math symbols. We'll be having an operation sign, we'll have a number, and we'll have variable. So here's our example. 3 more than x. So we're going to have a 3, that's our number. We're going to have an operation sign. More than would mean we would add. And we're going to have a variable, x. 3 more than x. Now your last page on your handout here is a glossary. This glossary will be helpful for you as you start practicing some of these, in that if you see these phrases, you know that your operation will be to add. So if you had the sum of t and 5, it's going to be t plus 5. The total of t and 5 will be t plus 5. T more than 5 will be t plus 5. T is added to 5, t plus 5. T plus 5, t plus 5. T increased by 5 will also be addition, t plus 5. So if you see any of these terms, any of these phrases, you know that the operation part will be addition. Now let's skip subtraction for just a moment and look at our glossary for multiplication and division. If you see the word times, multiplied by, the product of blank and blank, or the word of, you're going to be multiplying. So the product of t and 5, t times 5. T of 5, or 5 of t, would be t times 5, or 5 times t. The only one that's a little bit different here is the word twice. Twice doesn't just mean multiply. It means to multiply it by 2. So if you see twice t, twice m, it's going to be 2 times whichever variable they give you. For division, we don't have quite as many choices, but divided by or quotient of blank and blank would mean that you're going to divide. So if you have t divided by 5, the quotient of t and 5, the quotient of 5 and t, what you need to remember here is that you always put your variable and your number in the order they give you here for division. Meaning, if you have the quotient of 5 and t, then it's 5 divided by t. If you have the quotient of t and 5, then you say t divided by 5. So you need to put them in the given order. That's why we skipped subtraction for just a moment, because they will give you both options here. If you see these phrases, difference of blank and blank, minus, or decreased by, then you will keep the number and the variable in the order given. So let me give you an example. We're going to use our t and our 5 again. Difference of t and 5, t minus 5. T decreased by 5, t minus 5. You're going to keep the t first because they said the t first. But if you have these phrases, these 3 phrases right here, less than, fewer than, or subtracted from, then you will need to switch the order that they gave you. Let's use our t and our 5 again. T less than 5. We're going to put the 5 first. 5 minus t. T fewer than 5. 5 minus t. T subtracted from 5. 5 minus t. But if we had t decreased by 5, it would be the t first. T minus 5. So while you're doing your practice, you can certainly have this glossary out so that you can look at it, but eventually you're going to need to be able to do it without the glossary in front of you. So you'll want to kind of wean yourself away from that. All right, very good. Let's do some practice on this first lesson.